Good evening, friends, and welcome to another edition of Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace. You guys know the drill. We're retired New York City police detectives and 9/11 World Trade Center first responders. If you like all things true crime related from the police detective's perspective, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you get all things DutyRon and this guy right over here, Ed Wallace, when we go live or upload another video. Tonight, day 2 in the trial of Lori Vallow Daybell. Crime scene experts' testimony. We're going to get the breakdown because we got this guy right here, Ed Wallace, the crime scene expert. There was a lot more that went on during the day today, 6 hours plus of live streams from all different outlets. We heard from 2 firefighters. There was an issue with a jury. One of the people in the jury, they were, I think they released one. They put in the 16th juror. And they got it going. There was some, a little bit of snafu in the beginning, but we're going to break down day 2. Lori Vallow, it's like watching paint dry. It's like my ears are bleeding listening to this girl talk. Ed, your thoughts on day 2?
Day 2 was, it's like the movie Airplane. And she's that character in the airplane that went from passenger to passenger and chewed their ear off to the point they unalived themselves. That's how I felt.
Yeah. You can't get the moments back listening to Lori Vallow Daybell up there on the stand, really not making any sense. She doesn't know what hearsay is, sidebars galore. And at some points, I was even hearing her like cackling and laughing when they were describing how they were attending to her 4th husband, Charles Vallow, who lay dead on the floor. She was making a mockery of it. And, Charles' brother, Jerry, his sister, Kay, was in that courtroom and many other people. And those are the people who I thought about when I saw the show that she was putting on and the way she was being so disrespectful. And she was asking questions that didn't need to be asked. And it had no relevance to the case to help her. Right, Ed?
Well, right. Her defense is there was no conspiracy. Okay. So there's no reason for her to cross-examine anybody given this basic information in the beginning of the trial. Okay. So, I mean, how does it help her case? I didn't see anywhere in there her asking questions of these witnesses,
right?
And showing that she clearly doesn't understand hearsay. She doesn't understand what is and what is not hearsay. And she keeps making the same mistakes over and over again, to the point that the judge has to call sidebars and bring her up and speak to her. How many objections from the prosecutor get sustained because of her hearsay?
Yeah.
And it just goes to show you again, if you're a defendant and you're representing yourself in trial, you have a fool for a client.
Yeah. We say that over and over again, but once the 2 or 3 fire witnesses came up and did their testimony, I think it was 2. We had Daniel Coons, who was a retired Chandler detective. He testified that he had expertise or experience in the crime scene. Robbery and homicide was his last assignment. He spent 30 plus years with the Chandler Police Department, and the testimony that came from him was pretty vast. And he talked about the Lizard Q photography system, talked about evidence collection and preservation. And I'll let you just give an overview before we show a little piece of what he did, what he testified to today. He's not done because Lori Vallow was cross-examining him. And I'm sure that the prosecutor is going to come back. But yeah, your thoughts and maybe just a little overview of what he testified to today.
They made a big thing about this Lizard Q, and all it is a 360-degree panoramic digital SLR camera. It's not a Faro or like a 3D laser scanner. It just takes very high quality, high resolution images of the crime scene in 360 degrees.
Yeah, there was a couple of moments that got everybody talking. No blood found on the baseball bat. A lot of different things that you would assume would be found as the story was told. Alex Cox said that he attacked him with a baseball bat, hit him in the back of the head, which we know is hogwash.
Right. So according to this witness, he did not see any blood, nor did he speak about any hairs. If you get crawled in the head, and you got a head full of hair,
right?
You might expect to see some hair on that bat as well. And he makes no mention of that. I don't know if any lab analysts are coming in down the road to testify, whether or not there was any DNA or hairs or fibers on that baseball bat. I don't even know if they processed the baseball bat for DNA, because remember, it was the daughter that touched it first, and then Charles, and then the attacker, Lori's brother, and then Lori herself may have touched it, but we don't know yet what happened with that bat.
I think it's all BS, Ed. And listen, Dyson's Crazy Adventure says, I don't think Charles hit Alex at all. And I tend to agree. I agree with that. This is all part of their made up story.
Right. Well, that's what the prosecution's theory is, that in fact he did not get hit and the bat was planted to make up this self-defense story.
Let's take a listen to this short piece.
What's that?
That was the baseball bat?
In the show exhibit 35. Is that a closer up of that bat?
Yes, it is.
Were photographs taken of the sort of edge of the bat itself?
The fat edge, I guess.
The fat edge.
Here, I don't know nomenclature of the bat, so yeah.
Not the handle. How's that?
Yes.
When you were looking at this, were you looking for any blood? And I'm going to put up 37, 38, 39, or any biological material?
We were looking for visible evidence, yes.
Okay. Did you observe any yourself?
I did not.
Did the edge look pristine and clean to you, visibly?
Visibly, I did not see any sort of biological evidence on it.
Did you note any biological evidence anywhere on the bat that was visible to you?
I did not.
My friend is referred to 249. Do you recognize what 249 is?
Yes, I do.
And is that the bat that we have seen in these photos marked as item number 2? Can you see here in exhibit 35?
Yes.
Having seen Mr. Vallow's remains in the room and then having them removed, were you able to determine approximately where this defect that we see marked as 13 was located in relation to Mr. Vallow's body?
Yes, it would have been consistent with being under his left shoulder.
Did you take closer up photos of that defect?
Yes.
I'm going to put up 59 that shows that placard. Is this what you were talking about?
That is correct.
How did you, well, let me ask you this. Did you look at the rest of the floor to see if there were anything else that looked like that?
Yes, that was a consideration. So we did look at the rest of the floor.
So you went through that whole room to see if you found any similar type of defects on it?
Correct.
Did you?
No.
Okay, stop, Ron.
Yeah. So Ed,
Go back to that that bullet hole in the floor. Thank you.
got it.
Right there.
I want to get it clear.
Okay. All right. So you heard the information about the shored exit from the shoulder of Charles, the rear shoulder of Charles. So that shows you that he was lying down on this hard surface, this wood floor, when his skin and shoulder blade was in contact with this floor when that bullet tried to exit, thus giving the atypical exit wound known as a shored exit, okay, associated with that skin up against hard surface and the bullet trying to exit and then entering into this hard surface. All right. And there is a clear angle here and directionality. You could see it in the floor, which direction it was going. And later on in the testimony, he'll speak further on that and what they did. Did we lose the sound? Ron?
Consideration, so we did look at the rest of the floor.
Without
So
me there,
you
the
went
sound
through
goes
that
away.
whole room to see if you found any.
Been consistent with being under his left shoulder.
Did you take closer up photos of that defect?
Yes,
Can you put up 59 that shows that placard? Is this what you were talking about?
that is correct.
Could have got a lot closer.
Let me ask you this. Did you look at the rest of the
What is
floor
that ding ding?
or
It's on there.
anything else that looked like that?
Yes, that was consideration, so we did look at the rest of the floor.
So you went through that whole room to see if you found any similar type of defects on it?
Correct.
Did you?
No.
So this was the only one that looked like that?
Yes.
And I'm going to put up 58. So we see other defects in the ground. What made this different?
The size of it, the directionality, the fact that it was directly underneath the shoulder where we observed an exit wound, and the fact that there was a projectile found on the floor in proximity to this defect.
Was it,
So Ed, these defects here seem to just be,
Fragments.
yeah, fragments that may have had something to do with the exit trajectory, maybe bouncing off or coming out him and then coming back here and doing this. Or could this just be other defects in the floor? Like you can
No,
see.
no, it looks like lead fragments from a copper jacket lead bullet. But here's what happens, folks. If this bullet was fired directly down into Charles at 90 degrees, enters the chest area at 90 and exits the shoulder directly out, what would end up typically happening is you'd get that short exit, and it would, in this case, the harder surface and the bullet having slowed down somewhat because of traversing through the body. When it impacts the floor like this, if it's 90 degrees, it can have a tendency to bounce back up into the body.
Right.
Okay. In this case, since it was at an angle, it came out, a portion of the broken bullet came out of the ballistic damage on the floor between the body and the floor, and is found underneath Charles on the floor.
Yeah. I thought that we always love to hear the forensics, and hearing forensics is fascinating. But then there was more. They talked about the baseboard on the opposite side of the room. We'll get into that in a little bit.
let me ask you this. As a person who has processed crime scenes, fired guns themselves, did it appear to you consistent with a bullet strike?
Yes, it did.
And what were you basing that on?
The way the indentation is and how it tapers up, coming away from the body in the same direction that the projectile was located.
So there you have it. Ooh, can't have that, Ed. So you started to talk about this Lizard Q system that they use for photography. I'm not going to play his testimony because it was rather long, but I wanted you to just give the audience an overview of what that is. It's not like a Faro 3D laser scanner where it provides, a walkthrough of a crime scene. It's just photographs, correct?
Yes. It doesn't take measurements. It's just a 3D. It's not 3D. It is just a digital SLR, single lens reflex camera. Okay. It can be mirrorless, but in this case, I believe it is mirrored. And it's placed in a housing, and that housing will rotate. It's mounted on a tripod. It'll go in 360 degrees, and then the lens will go from the tripod legs up to the ceiling. There you go. There it is right there. So you see how the camera lens is mounted and the body is in there, and
So
it just takes basically a panoramic view. There are many different models of this out there. There's 3D panel scan. There's a whole bunch of camera systems out there like this.
Yeah, this is a better visualization of it.
Right. You can see there's a Canon camera in there. And depending on
this is exactly what he was talking about today, and this is what they used at this scene. Now, I want to ask you, as a crime scene expert, Ed, being that they from the get-go, Alex Cox claimed this was a self-defense. They questioned him. They let him go later on at the station house, and then as Lori Vallow Daybell mentioned in court, that it took almost 2 years or over 2 years for them to charge her with this conspiracy.
Right. They objected to that on her opening statement.
Right. But my question to you is, for the listening audience, do the Chandler Police Department come in and treat this? And Ed, I know the answer to this, but I'm asking you so we could set this up for the people who are listening. Do the crime scene and all of the detectives and everyone that comes in, do they treat this as a homicide and then work their way back and then clear them and then not? So what my question is this evidence collection and everything they did at that location as it was a crime scene, as a murder happened there? Or did they treat this with less urgency? I know I'm not using the right.
Well, I believe they treated it as a homicide, right? And the homicide can be justified and the homicide can be not justified, okay? But they treated it like a murder scene from all intents and purposes. But what I didn't hear and what I don't understand is if there were ever any warrants obtained, or did they get consent from Lori to go into this house. Now, Charles was paying for the house, but Lori was living here, right? And correct me if I'm wrong. Is that not the case?
Yeah. He was paying for that house, and he wasn't living there. He was living in Texas.
Right. He was living in Texas, but Charles was paying for the house, and it's a rental. It's they don't own it. Neither one of them own it, but Charles was paying the bill.
Correct.
Okay. So that being the case, was a warrant or consent ever obtained for them to go in here and do what they did? I've never heard that talked about or understood whether or not that those areas were satisfied. Because if Lori's living there, okay, and at the time she wasn't considered a suspect, all right, and they were investigating her brother for killing her husband in that house, in her house, did she give them consent to process the crime scene?
I believe that they she talked about in day one that she went to the Chandler police, was questioned, so was her brother, they were released, and then they asked them to go back to the house because they wanted him to recreate everything that happened for the detectives. So they went back to that house, I believe the next day, or maybe sooner, and they were back in there. So this crime scene was processed, given back to the family the next day.
Okay, so Shelley says they got a warrant. Okay, because
right, so,
I never did see that.
Okay, so that's good.
Okay, good. Okay, so there you go right there. If they were going to fluff this off and try to sweep this under the this is justified, no need to investigate this, they wouldn't have done that.
Right. Jeff, thank you for the super chat. Glad to watch this live. Hi, Ed and Ron. Welcome, Robbie, our great friend from Australia, coming in with some super chat and some super love. Thank you, Robbie. We always appreciate you. So let's listen to the crime scene detective, retired detective from the Chandler Police Department, Detective Daniel Coons. Let's listen to a little bit of his testimony. I'm going to speed it up a little bit, but let's listen to it.
Those skills that you learned in that shooting reconstruction course as a detective since then?
Yes, many times.
I assume you passed the certification test?
I did.
So on July 11th of 2019, were you working as a detective at that time for the homicide unit at the Chandler Police Department?
Yes, I was.
During the weekdays, what were your, I guess, work hours normally?
My normal work hours were Monday through Thursday, about 7 to 5.
When you are working as a detective, we've heard a patrol is out driving around. What are you guys doing?
Well, we carry a caseload. So many times we are working on the cases that we've taken previous days or weeks ahead of time that have to be done, such as overall photographs. Before we even think about manipulating anything or marking anything, we want to try to capture the scene as it was that we walked into it.
And I've heard you say that so many times, that, you know, you want to capture the scene exactly how it was when the detectives arrived. Now, granted, Charles Vallow was worked on, as we saw on the body cam footage, by the fire EMS crew that came in there. They did CPR on him, but he was, as we now know, down for 40 plus minutes before they even called 911. And you know, somebody said in the chat, you know, how is the self-defense when he was shot a second time on the ground? That's the prosecution. She's going to have to lay that out, and I think she's already started that. And the jurors are going to see from the prosecution as they lay it out, right, Ed?
Yeah, but it shouldn't have taken 2 years to get to that point. Okay. You know, once, you know, you shoot somebody until the threat is ended. If he is now down on the ground and he is disarmed of the alleged baseball bat, remember, this is their story, right? Then you can't justify the second shot.
Yeah.
Okay, because that's like an execution, you know, the coup de grace, right? Okay. No, I that should have been resolved way before 2 years.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's on a prosecutor at that point.
And I do feel that, and we did speak about this many years ago. Once, you know, Tammy Daybell came up, that it wasn't, that she didn't die in her sleep and she didn't have this medical episode. And then they found the kids at Chad Daybell's pet cemetery in his yard. That's when they said, oh shit, we got to look back at this. And you and I were critical about this.
Yeah.
And we said, you know, like this should have been, you know, this shouldn't have gone that long, but you know, we can't turn back the hands of times. And I'm hoping that justice will be had for, and I know it will be had for Charles Vallow. It's just that, like you say, justice delayed is justice denied. 2 years. I mean, come on. What do you got up on the screen? Joey Lupp?
Yep. Joey Lupp asks, have I ever testified in a case where the judge allowed the jury to submit questions? No, in New York, we don't allow that here. The only juries that can ask questions are grand juries, not the actual trial jury. But this is one of the few jurisdictions that throughout the United States that do allow trial juries to write down a question, give it to the judge, and then the judge will ask the witness the question if it's appropriate. Right. But no, again, I've never had that happen here in New York.
There's more than a handful of states across the United States that allow that, and Indiana is one of them. Arizona is another, and yeah. So a lot of stuff in the chat. A lot of people in the chat here. Hey, that's great. Says the police department believed Lori's lies. She was able to manipulate them, sitting Indian style and flipping her hair, and it was almost like she was flirting with the cop. I mean, the cop was asking her the pertinent questions, but you know, she left there with a victim's advocate. I mean, how embarrassing is that? This is the drawing that he refers to, and this will show some of the crime scene.
Detective. Oh, never mind. There you go. Okay, so this is Exhibit 5, the first page. Is this sort of an overview of the entire residence, as well as the items of evidence that you collected.
That is correct.
So we understand where we see these little yellow placards. What do those indicate on your diagram?
On this diagram, they indicate the items of evidence for that particular room.
Okay. And do they each have a number associated with them?
Yes.
And is the second page of your diagram,
Ed, is this standard for crime scene, a crime scene unit? Is this something that you would do in the NYPD or no?
Oh yeah, oh definitely. We present the sketch during the direct testimony into evidence, and the prosecutor would lay the foundation. If this is a true and accurate depiction of the crime scene, and most of the crime scene investigators would do their sketches not to scale, but because of my background, all of my crime scene sketches were done to scale, and that was a kind of oddity in the court systems. And I said,
Right.
I would testify that no, my diagrams are to scale, and so they were extremely accurate as to the location where the evidence was located on the sketch.
I would have loved to have seen some of your work, Ed. Were you ever able to save some of it?
Oh yeah, I did on one of our shows. I showed some of my crime scene sketches.
No, but I'm saying maybe we'll do it like we'll do it again because there's a lot of new subscribers and people maybe didn't see that.
Oh, okay, sure.
a reflection of what each of those numbers refers to?
Yes, it is.
We see in this A, B, and distances. What is that?
So the reference points for this particular purpose, we did a triangulation method. So we take measurements from 2 known points in that room, and then we measure out to the item of interest. And then that was how we get a point A and a point B measurement.
All right, so at the first page here, that's the actual diagram. What is the reference points that you are using to make these distance measurements?
So the reference points are not depicted on this diagram, but in this particular room, if you look at the wall where items number 2 and 12 are, the upper or the left upper corner is B, and if you go straight down towards the kitchen area, that along that wall, that corner is A.
Okay. So when we see a reference measurement from A of 21 feet to the bat, we're talking 21 feet this way should be where the bat was?
No, you're talking 21 feet from that corner, straight line to the bat.
Okay. So whatever the closest measurement or closest way to get there would be?
Correct.
So the bat, it would be something like that.
Correct.
Okay. And then when we see reference point B for the bat, then you're talking from this point to the bat?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just so we understand.
This is the preferred method the FBI likes to use. We use a different method called triangulation. So they're using rectangle coordinate plotting, and we use triangulation.
But this is all still good.
I'm sorry. They're using triangulation. We use rectangle coordinate plotting.
Okay, so it's the opposite of what you said.
Yeah.
Gotcha. But this is also crime scene 101. This could be used.
Right. But if you did a 3D laser scan, there would be no need for you to take any of those measurements because the laser scan measures everything.
Right. All right. So I'm going to let this roll a little bit more, and anything that you see that you might want to pick out, and then we'll take some questions from the audience and wrap it up.
When Chandler Police Department goes to a scene like this, do they utilize any type of photography system to help better document a scene so that you can see things more clearly sometimes than with photographs alone?
Yes, depending on the scene, we would use a system called the Lizard Q.
What is Lizard Q?
It's, in essence, a 360-degree photographic system that you set up on a tripod inside or wherever your location is, inside, outside, and you start the process, and the internal computer for this system specifically takes a set number of pictures where it's overexposed all the way to underexposed and the images in between. And it does this at various locations along the path to create enough overlapping images, and then those images are stitched together and actually create a 360-degree sphere of the scene.
Hold on, Ron.
Did you have to?
Okay, folks, I hope you notice what he's doing here. You know, this is how you testify in court if you're a witness, especially an expert witness, which the judge reluctantly acknowledged him to be an expert, but because he's allowed, as an expert, he's allowed to give opinion. With that said, you see, he takes the question, he looks at the person that's questioning him, and then he turns to the jury, which is off his left shoulder, and he gives his answer to the jury. He's speaking directly to the jury. So, you know, that's how you testify. You look to the jury. They're the triers of fact. You look in their eyes and you educate them, and you make sure that they, you know, you can see it in their head shaking and everything, that they're understanding what it is you're telling them.
Right. And he did that throughout all of his testimony today. I noticed that. And any good, and he was also examined by Lori Vallow. It was really hard to listen to, and I didn't really pay much attention to it, but he did a great job of explaining and making that eye contact, because like you said, it's really important to do that.
Get trained on how to use LizardQ?
There was some training involved, yes.
If, again, my paralegal can approach with Exhibit 139, you can take a look at that.
I'm speeding this up, folks.
Okay.
You recognize a thumb drive that is in Exhibit 139.
Yes.
What is on that thumb drive?
On this thumb drive will be the LizardQ spheres.
And is there a reader on there so that you can actually view it?
Correct.
There's a piece of paper in there as well. What is that?
The piece of paper is a set of instructions on how to use the LizardQ viewer so that you can view the spheres.
And did you initial the thumb drive to indicate that you had viewed it and you recognize that as the LizardQ that you created on July 11th of 2019?
I have.
Or did you actually create that?
I created the thumb drive.
And that's your thumb drive that you put it onto?
Yes.
All right. State will move to admit Exhibit 139.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
139 submitted.
Judge, at this point, might I ask the witness to come down here to utilize the LizardQ? I can sit at the table, but it needs to be put into a computer to do that, and I don't think we can hook it up there.
We have a program that we can combine those and make it a measurement sphere. So we could do.
Ed, I asked you this question about measurements, and talked about that program that you mentioned.
Yeah, it's a photogrammetry program. Okay, so he would have to take the information that was obtained from the LizardQ, the spheres of photography there, and then put it into the other program to try to scale everything. Now, if you've ever seen real estate walkthroughs, you know, the real estate community uses a very similar camera system to high-end show their real estate that they're selling, and you can put yourself in various positions in the room and then manipulate the view so that you can pan around and see everything.
Now, Ed, in this next slide that we're going to be showing them, I fast forwarded ahead, is the actual 45, the firearm that was used to murder Charles Vallow.
Yeah. So
if you're sensitive to any of the firearms or talking or looking at it, this is your little disclaimer here. So we're going to be showing this. This was broadcast live on Court TV and all over YouTube, and he talks about the weapon that was used to murder. They say kill Charles Vallow. I like to call it as it is. This is the weapon that was used to execute Charles Vallow, and he's going to be talking about it here.
Biological evidence, blood on this gun.
Yes, we do look at them to help determine that.
The sound was out, and I just fast forwarded it. It'll come.
yeah, so I think she was questioning him about the biological evidence on the gun, and he didn't find any.
Right. It comes back here. I don't know why they did this. It was done for a reason.
79 next to Charles.
Yeah, see, it's not playing sound, and then it comes on. I'm just going to let it play. What a pain in the neck.
So of more relevance to you was what was next to it.
Correct.
What did you find there? What is this orange thing there? And we see a whole lot of placard numbers.
Right. So the placard numbers are obviously identifying particular items that are going to be seized as evidence. That we have the orange bag with what appears to be a gun box inside. And then we have the pistol, and the 3 placards next to the pistol are specific for the pistol itself, the magazine from the pistol, and potentially the chambered round in the pistol.
So 74, is that a close-up of that pistol?
It is.
What kind of pistol was that?
Pardon.
What
Ed, one of your friends checking in, Pete.
Hey, Pete.
what caliber was it?
It's a 45.
That the same caliber as the casings that you had found in the front room next to Charles?
Yes.
Does this show another angle of that pistol in 75?
Yes, looking at the top of the pistol.
When
It
pistol
has a, folks, hold on.
6,
Ron?
Yep.
Yeah, so at the end, folks, if you don't understand what you're looking at the end of the barrel there, this is what's called a threaded barrel, so that he could put a suppressor on the end of this gun. If he had gotten a legal suppressor, he would have to have obtained a tax stamp per the ATF NFA, National Firearms Act, and paid for that, and he could put a suppressor on the end of that 45.
Right. Yeah, I was looking at that today, and I kind of thought that that's what that was, something to receive that suppressor. Shelley, thank you for the $20 Canadian. She says, I always thought that the police will detain someone who they believe is a threat. My question is, why wasn't Alex in cuffs? We covered this yesterday. He just shot somebody, and they knew this coming to the scene. In New York City and in most major metropolitan police departments, and in any police department, if you're practicing safety, for safety reasons alone, that person gets cuffed until we figure it out. And he's not allowed to sit freely on a curb. But in Chandler, that's how they did this. And it was all on body cam. And we could critique this all day long, all day, every day. But at the end of it all, safety comes first, not only for the officers, but for all of the residents that live on that block. You cuff this man, you put him in the back of your patrol car, and you figure it out. Ed?
So Angela is asking, what's a suppressor? Is that an extension? Well, it's the correct terminology for what people normally call a silencer.
Right. And this came up with the Luigi Mangione case. Ed, back to the safety and the cuffing.
Yeah, 100%.
You're the first officer on the scene. That guy gets cuffed up, no?
Yeah, he gets cuffed up until you figure out what's going on for officer safety.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, and they may have tried to make a little bit of a deal with the first officer going through the house and not performing CPR. Well, his first function is his safety, so
Right.
he's got to clear the house.
Yeah, make sure there's nobody hiding.
He checked on Charles, didn't get a pulse, right? But he doesn't know what's going on in this house. He doesn't know who else is in here. He doesn't know if there is an armed suspect still lurking about somewhere. So his priority is clear the house for his own safety first, and then come back once he's satisfied the house is clear and get the help he needs for Charles.
Right. And I was looking for closet doors being open, and looking inside the bathroom, behind the shower curtain, behind whatever. It was just a quick he did go around a couple of times, but nothing was opened up. He didn't look outside in the back. There was a sliding glass door, I believe, that led out to the back. All of that stuff needed to be looked at. We could critique this all day long, but if you ask me, will the prosecution get a guilty verdict for Lori Shallow Vallow? I say hell yeah, 100%. The Chandler Police Department let Charles down. Not only did they let Charles down, these two killing machines were able to go on and murder her own two children.
Well, you know,
Daybell's
I wouldn't just leave it solely on them. The prosecutor let them down as well. Now, anytime you have a death in New York City, a grand jury is typically impaneled.
Right.
Okay. Especially if it's a shooting. All right. And I don't know that that was done in this case until 2 years later, after I think Chandler became aware that hey, this Lori chick, she murdered her two kids in Idaho.
Yeah.
And buried them in her husband's property. That's when I looked at this stuff again.
Yeah. It's just amazing how this all went down. And at the end of the day, if these two were collared for this conspiracy, Alex for the murder of Charles, we could be looking at a different outcome. But you can't do that shoulda, coulda, woulda. They didn't do it, and there should be something that all police departments across the country should learn from this mistake.
The individual's wearing gloves. Why is that?
Again, to help preserve the evidence in the event that DNA were to need to be done, we could articulate that we did not touch it with our bare hands to impart our DNA onto it.
Okay.
Are you visual?
What do you got, Ed?
Okay, yeah, all right. You didn't depart your DNA on it, but if DNA is on that gun and you're holding it like that and you didn't swab it first for DNA, that DNA can then transfer to your gloves. And if you're not changing your gloves when you then go to other parts of the gun or manipulate the gun to make it safe, to take the magazine out or whatever the case may be, you could be transferring DNA all over the gun.
So the gun, in your opinion, shouldn't have been touched until it was swabbed and processed.
Not like that.
Yeah.
And not photographed.
And this is that day at the scene. This is him processing the scene.
You know, I train my people never to touch the gun as gingerly as possible in the least amount of spots as possible before it's, you know, that your priority is the evidence that's on the gun first and making the gun safe. Okay. So to make the gun safe, you have to touch it. There's no two ways about that, right? You got to drop the magazine. Okay. And then you have to check the chamber to make sure it's empty. Okay. And you have to manipulate the slide. And so, but you may want to swab things first because the gun is not going to shoot itself. Right. And the swab, if you're swabbing certain areas for DNA, it's not going to cause the gun to go off.
Right.
Okay. And you never photograph yourself holding firearms like this.
Things are done differently outside of New York.
Looking at this gun to see, and this is 77, if there is any visible biological evidence, blood on this gun.
Yes, we do look at them to help determine that.
And did you observe any biological evidence, any blood or what appeared to be blood on this handgun?
No, ma'am.
If you had observed that, would you have noted it and photographed it and documented it?
Yes.
Now, when you got this gun, was it loaded?
Yes.
And in 78 and 79, is that photographs of the magazine in the gun?
Correct.
So when we talk about the magazine,
I just don't understand these photos.
Exhibit 76, where is that in this picture?
So you can see the base of the magazine at the bottom of the grip, close to what would be the individual's left thumb. There's that black piece of plastic that extends horizontally across the base of the grip.
And so that's the magazine that you then took out that we see in 79.
Correct.
Monique, you never do this,
And
and that
why-
is Hollywood. Okay, you never do that. You never stick a gun down the barrel of a firearm. You just don't do these things.
Magazine removed.
Well, we have to make the weapon safe. And that's the first step in making it safe, is to remove any more source of ammunition that could feed into it.
Was there a cartridge or a live round in the chamber?
Yes.
So how do you make that safe then?
Well, the only way you can is to manipulate the slide to force the extractor to pull the cartridge out, and the ejector kicks the cartridge out.
Also in this photo, there was this orange bag. And you had told us that inside of it, we can kind of see the corner here. We see it better in 82. Did you remove an item from that orange bag?
Yes.
And I'm going to show 83, 84. What is that we see there?
That is a gun box that is consistent with the firearm that was laying on the floor.
So consistent with the 45 caliber handgun.
Correct.
And that was inside this orange bag. Was there any live rounds? And I'm going to show you Exhibit 85, also in that orange bag.
Yes.
And a closer up of that, was that another 45 caliber round?
It is.
And so when we say it was live, it hadn't been fired yet.
Yeah, cartridge has not been fired.
We'll start then by having my paralegal can take up exhibits 237 or 246.
All right. Ed, I wanted to ask you the one thing that you and I spoke about that Lori Shalavallo asked on cross, and why would that be significant, or what was her thought process, even though it's hard for us to get in her head. But she asked him about stippling, right?
Yes, so you're talking about the stippling.
Yeah.
Okay, so she asked this witness about stippling, and if he had observed any stippling on Charles. Now, stippling is burnt and ungummed burn powders and gunshot and primer residue particles that are made up of barium, antimonium, and lead, and so forth that follow the projectile out of the barrel, and if the barrel is in close proximity to the victim, then there's a potential for that residue to get on the victim's clothing around the entrance holes, okay, of the ballistic damage to the clothing caused by the bullet as it's perforating the clothing to get to the body. And, you know, depending on the angle of the gun, you'll get certain patterns, elliptical patterns. And if it's 90 degrees, you'll get a circle pattern. And then depending on how close and the distance away, the pattern will go from, if it's close, not contact, but if it's close, the patterns will be smaller. But as you pull away, those patterns the diameters will widen, or the elliptical shapes will widen. So she asked him if he had seen any of this, and he said no, and she was taken back by it. And then she asked about, well, what about the medical examiner? Didn't they find stippling? And his answer was no. So somehow, I don't know what she was referring to or what she saw, or in a report somewhere, or she thought there was stippling in this case.
Right.
Okay. Now, the lack of stippling, in my opinion, goes against the claim of self-defense. In the heat of being hit in the head with a baseball bat, you take out your gun and you're in close proximity to your attacker and you fire your gun. Then there should, if you're that close, then there should be, if you're at, the distance of a bat and you discharge your gun, there should be some gunshot residue around the two bullet wounds that, associated with the clothing bullet holes and the wounds. Right. And it's not seen here.
Right.
So did anybody see anything further? Because when I was viewing this testimony, it seemed to have cut off, and the judge put them on a break, and then I never saw what happened afterwards. Did anybody see anything after that?
So Buffy says that they did get a warrant. They talked about it at 11:30.
Yeah. We already. Thank you, Buffy. We already, got that information that the warrant, because I didn't see it because I came into the testimony later.
So this is everything. So I could just fast forward. This is Lori questioning him here.
Your assessment, you were able to leave after that assessment was made, that everything was accomplished?
Oh,
Yeah, but getting back to her question,
Understanding?
you never, as lawyers were trained, you never ask a question you don't know the answer to.
Yeah.
And it appeared she was asking numerous questions she did not know the correct answer to.
Yeah. I say this to our audience and to everyone who's watching this trial and who's going to go through the pain of weeks of this, because they're talking about 6 to 8 weeks or 5, whatever. She's on trial for conspiracy to commit murder. All of this that she's talking about with her cross and everything that the prosecution's bringing up here is building up to her, to the district attorney, to the state, proving that Lori and Alex conspired to commit this murder. So the importance of this is not so much the details and did they do it right, did they process the scene right, but the prosecutor is leading these jurors into this conspiracy. And that conspiracy is going to come when we start seeing on day, I don't know what day this is going to happen, but when they start talking and showing the text messaging and the communication to, put this thing in motion. And
Right.
we're going to hear about how Lori drugged or talked to one of her friends about giving Charles some of JJ's medicine and grinding it up and putting it in his protein shakes.
Mhm.
There's going to be so much that we're going to hear about that this is going to be trivial, because they don't have to prove to the jury of anything about the shooting, about Alex and how he killed Charles. What they got to prove is the conspiracy that she put together with others to commit this murder. Right? Am I wrong or am I right here?
Yeah, you're right. You're right. C. Cooper jumped in here and said, hey, yes, Lori said, would it surprise him that the medical examiner, ... that the gun was 2 to 4 feet away. Okay. Absent any stippling and an intermediate target between the muzzle of the gun and the victim at 2 feet, it would surprise me if that barrel was 2 feet away from the victim at the time it was discharged. There should be some gunshot residue on that clothing. Okay.
She asked you about the stippling right at the very end, right?
Yeah, towards the end. Okay. So the medical examiner, so she seems to believe that the medical examiner found some stippling. Did anybody see that testimony? Did anybody see this here? What C. Cooper is telling us here? And can you elaborate any more on it? Because I said I had a problem after she started that line of questioning. For some reason, it jumped and they went to break, and I never got the feedback.
Right.
Close
Let me listen to this.
for the pattern to actually present itself in the particles embed in the clothing or the skin.
Okay, there it is.
If stippling was found, how far away would the gun have to be from
Could you go back? Could you go back a little bit?
You're just saying that he shot from a different angle?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you think he was standing in the same location?
I don't know that.
So according to where you put him standing with the first shot, The casing bounced off of the wall to the right and landed to the left.
Correct.
And then where you have him standing in the second shot, the same thing happened.
Approximately, yes.
And how far apart were those casings found?
I don't have the specific measurement of how far apart they were. They were a few feet.
They're a few feet apart.
Yes.
So if he was standing in the same place, would they be a few feet apart or would they be closer?
It depends on a different amount of things, like how was the gun being held? Was it canted to the side? Was it phenomena? So the phenomena.
Okay.
Is that right here?
Stippling will give. I don't know what he had in his notes. I didn't author his report.
Can you describe stippling for us? What
Go
that
back
is?
a little bit.
Sure. It's basically,
Say again, Ed?
Go back just a little bit before this, because
Stop breathing down my neck.
oh, don't make me come over there and give you a bitch slap.
Oh, hey. The audio cuts out.
could have slid the body sideways.
Okay, let it run from here.
Anything that
Thank you.
you can do to the body, it could have been done in a short area.
And is that common in, I don't know with shooting, if is that common with someone to shoot once and then move and shoot again?
I'll sustain it on speculation.
In your experience as a firearms expert who fires a lot of guns, right? Would that be a common thing to do?
All right, I'll sustain the objection as to speculation.
Let's talk about stippling.
Thank you.
The first shot, according to you, had stippling. Is that correct?
No,
It did not have any stippling.
none was observed.
And the second shot,
None was observed.
no stippling was observed.
Correct.
Is that what's in the ME's report?
I believe so.
That there was no stippling? Can I have a minute, Your Honor?
Oh,
You seem so stupid. I mean, she's supposed to know that. He's asking him to confirm it for her.
I mean, he didn't put that in his report. Then she's basing this question on what she saw in a medical examiner's report. I mean, where's she getting this information from?
I have no idea.
I know I saw. C. Cooper said that she asked a question about, would it surprise you if the medical examiner said the shooting took place 2 to 4 feet away?
You were observing the autopsy. The ME didn't say anything about stippling,
I don't recall any mention about stippling.
and you didn't have a discussion with him about it?
We would have if he'd observed any.
And so if he said that to someone else, you would be surprised?
I don't know what he had in his notes. I didn't author his report.
Can you describe stippling for us? What that is?
Sure. It's basically a combination of particles that come out from behind or follow the projectile as it exits the barrel. A lot of times it's partial burned or unburned powder, and it's a short distance phenomena, so the person has to be extremely close for the pattern to actually present itself in the particles embed in the clothing or the skin.
So if stippling was found, how far away would the gun have to be from the victim?
That depends on the gun.
No, it also depends on the ammo.
So Ed, you said it depends on the ammo.
It depends on the ammo and the gun. It's both. So you don't know how much, if that was a hand loads or if they of their commercial loads, meaning how much gunpowder is in there. You don't know any of those things. So it's a combination, and you can do test fires with that gun and the ammo that was used by the suspect into an article of cheesecloth or a pig skin if it's on skin. If it's not skin, then what I normally do is I buy the same article of clothing that had sustained the gunshot residue pattern, and I then do a series of gunshot tests with that same gun and the same ammo used in the shooting, and then try to replicate the pattern based upon the angles and the size and shape of the patterns.
I think one of the problems here is that they didn't treat this as a homicide investigation going forward. Like after day 1 or 2, I mean, they released, obviously that day, Alex and Lori to go on their merry way. So, I mean, I could be off, but I'm just thinking that a lot of things weren't done, as you're mentioning here, because they didn't, this to do those tests cost money.
Well, yeah, I mean, it cost my time. It cost my time. It doesn't really cost that much money. You have the gun, you have his ammo. You can go out and purchase more of the same ammo.
Right, but I'm saying my argument is if they're not investigating it as a homicide,
right,
and just thus you have no reason to start doing all of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And they only started doing it, I don't know when they discovered, but I have to assume that they had that whoa moment when people started to drop. People were dropping all over the place, and they were like, "Wait a minute, we got to look at this."
That 2 to 4 feet is for a lack of. It's like a standard that pathologists use for a lack of gunpowder residue or gunshot residue or stippling. That's you could see that in their training, because I've seen that personally, and I've been trained in gunshot shooting reconstruction and gunshot wounds and stippling and GSR residues by multiple pathologists around the nation, and some of the premier ones that even wrote the book on it, Vincent and Dominic DeMeo.
I am not a expert on the stippling patterns. That is something that we would have to send to the lab for. And what they would do is they would test it with witness panels at different distances to give that information.
Is there an estimate?
That's where it would come in. Usually the medical examiner, if they observe stippling, will give an estimate of close or contact.
So would you be surprised if he said 2 to 4 feet?
If that's what he says.
If there's stippling, then the gun would have to be 2 to 4 feet.
No,
Possible, but I wouldn't hold my hat on that. No.
I'd be surprised with this 45 if they got stippling beyond 2 feet.
Yeah. Lorraine, thank you for the comment. She says, DutyRon, why would they not treat it as homicide? Because they didn't. They let both the parties go. Alex.
Well, I think they treated it as a justifiable homicide.
Right. But so justifiable and straight out homicide, where someone murders somebody for no reason at all, gets a different type of investigation. And now obviously here they didn't go any further with hairs and fibers and DNA testing and such. They I mean, they did do a workup here, but a lot of other things weren't done. And look, the guy who committed this murder is dead, and we all know why he's dead. Person that's responsible is standing right in court.
Ron, let me just step out for a second. I want to go get something and come back.
Okay.
All
Very
right.
good. Ed Wallace is stepping out. I'm removing him from the stage. All right, let's let the rest of this play.
I would have to have the gun tested for that.
Okay.
Okay.
And really,
Is this a good spot to break for the evening?
sure, Your Honor.
I mean, I'm not cutting you off. If you want to ask a few more questions, that's fine.
This guy
That's
is
fine.
All right, we'll take our.
this judge is an angel, man. He's like actually encouraging. Hey, I don't want to cut you off, but if you want to ask a couple more questions, go right ahead. Oh my God. Yeah, Ed's on a mission. He's going to be getting some things to show us. But look, hashtag Ed, hashtag DutyRon. This is a conspiracy to commit murder trial. This is not a trial about Alex Cox committing this murder. It's the trial that has the defendant right here she is standing accused of conspiracy to murder Charles Vallow. And that's what they're going to have to prove. But this is just the setup. This is setting up the jury, as I said before, for the meat and potatoes of this thing, which is that conspiracy to commit murder. And we're going to hear a lot of text messages. We're going to hear a lot of electronic communication between her, Chad, and also Alex Cox. Ed, he's looking through a manual. He's got a book. All right, let me put him on. What do we got here? Hold on.
Okay. I get the receipts, folks. So, Dr. DeMayo's father and then his son, Vincent, trained me on gunshot wounds, as well as Dr. Wayne Carver from Connecticut, who was the chief pathologist in Connecticut for some time. Let me just get to stippling and bring up exactly what pathologists normally train each other. Okay, I'll have to go to the back. And you can see I have a lot of notes in the book because I had to be certified as a senior crime scene analyst, and part of this is here. So here it is. That's actual stippling on skin. Those are the burnt and unburnt gunpowders that are superheated and burn themselves into the skin and create what's called tattooing or stippling. Okay. Based upon that pattern, we can do a series of test fires with that gun into pigskin with that same ammunition, and get that information. So they have a series of tables in here. If you want to get this book, this is Gunshot Wounds by Dr. Vincent DeMayo. He has multiple editions, but they list ranges of the ability to find tattooing or stippling from 38 specials, 22s, and so forth, and the various ammunition. And so handguns forensic textbooks generally have stated that the powder tattooing extends out to a maximum distance of 18 to 24 inches.
There you go.
So that's 1.5 feet, okay, or actually 1'4", 1'4" inches to 2 feet. That is the maximum distance here from the muzzle. But again, there's a caveat to this. Such statements do not take into account the different physical forms of the propellant powders and the amount of propellant and so forth and so on, just as I said earlier. Okay. So if he's saying 2 to 4 feet, right? As she said, that goes beyond the range of identifiable tattooing or stippling. So it suggests to me she's misinterpreting what he's saying. He's saying, hey, I didn't see tattooing, so it had to be anywhere to 2 to 4 feet away. The muzzle of the gun had to be anywhere from 2 to 4 feet away from this victim. That's the way I'm reading this.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you all?
It certainly makes sense to me. All right, we're beyond that 1 hour, Ed. I want to thank you for taking out the time. I want to thank the chat, everyone who's left super chats, those of you who support us through the Buy Me Cup of Coffee app and Patreon. You guys are really great. The moderators, we have simply the best moderators on YouTube. I think we broke it down pretty well. Carmen's got something for you about a silencer, Ed?
She said, what if a silencer was used? Well, that would cut down on the powder.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do not believe a silencer was used in this murder. But again, somebody put in the chat, Lori's on trial for conspiracy to commit murder, not for committing murder. But all of this has to be put out there to set it up for the jury. Like you said, Ed, the jury are the fact finders, and it's up to them to come up with a verdict at the end of this thing. So Dr. Ed Moskowitz is here. Good to see you, Julie. Thank you for being here. A lot of people have checked in with us tonight. We're going to continue to follow this. There's live coverage all day, 6-hour live streams people are doing. You guys can follow this trial. Listening to Lori is painful, but it's part of this process and we got to hear it. So Ed, you have anything else that you want to add to this? Any questions or anything that you want to clear up as it pertains to this guy's going to be back on the stand tomorrow, right?
Yeah, I don't know if he finished, ladies and gentlemen. If you saw the rest of it, did he finish or is he coming back tomorrow? Because I'd be interested to see it. I really want to see the pathologist. Okay.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's coming up. That's going to be coming up soon. Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Schmitty, Lexi, Joey Brooklyn, Kitty KU, Dawn Marie, C. Cooper, Jen B.
You didn't finish. Okay, good. We'll pick him up tomorrow morning then.
Definitely be back 10:30 Pacific, 2:30 2:30 New York time.
Right,
So
it's a half hour delayed.
Yeah, it's a half-hour delay. Again,
All
I
right.
want to thank everyone for subscribing, everybody for supporting. Strength, prayers, and positive vibes. I text with Charles Vallow brother last night, Jerry Vallow. They live in Texas. He flew to Phoenix. He's in Arizona in the courtroom, Charles' brother. I text with him last night and this morning. I talked to his wife, Melanie. She stayed back home. And I want to send strength, prayers, and positive vibes to the Vallow family, to Kay, Woodcock, and Larry, and everybody, that has to go through this. Colby's there. I don't know if he's in the courtroom, but I know it was his birthday today. So Colby Ryan, happy birthday. That's Lori's son. And I want to thank everybody for being here. Ed, I know you always got something to say, and thank you for the education again tonight.
No, it's my pleasure. Hey, folks, thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing your time, your precious time with us, and spreading the word about us. I know you can get your YouTube True Crime Fix anywhere you like. But again, thanks. But remember, folks, always stay safe, stay prepared, and watch your six.
Amen to that. Good night, everybody.